Hello, tributes, and welcome back to episode 2 of the Euromerican Games. Today we will be reading the 4th through the 6th Euromerican Games. Before we begin, I would like to apologize for how long it has been since I posted part 1. I'm pretty sure in part 1 I said that I was gonna record part 2 the next day, but then I got busy, and then after that I got really sick, and I was sick with strep for like an entire week, and my throat was messed up. I couldn't speak properly. I couldn't and I'm pretty sure my voice is kind of still recovering from that a little bit, but I'm feeling way better this week. This week I had a way better go at things, but I was super busy, so I couldn't find time to record episode 2 until now. So, yeah, let's just get straight into it. Just without further ado, actually, I have thanks to give. Thank you to Andrew McLean, who we're using some of the art for. Literally, I'm pretty sure the only art we're using from him is the reaping pictures. So, we're not using as much art from him as we would in a normal Ashes of the Hunger Games or Ashes of the Hunger Games to Ashes and Blood episode. We're not like we're not we're not using the same amount of art from Andrew McLean as those, but we are still using some of his art, so I would like to thank him for making the art that we are using. So there is that. I would also like to thank Christian Blanco and Lauren McCouch, and oh my goodness, Morbid Search. That's the guy who made the Europa games that I was talking about in the first episode that I completely forgot his name. His channel name is Morbid Search. I'm pretty sure there's no capital letters and there's no spaces, but his channel will be linked in the description just in case you can't find it from just randomly searching it up. His channel will be linked in the description, so you probably won't even have to do that. Just like I'm pretty sure I linked Andrew McLean's blog, like art blog, and Christian Blanco and Lauren McCouch's channels. And I also linked both episodes of the Europa games in the description of the last video. So all that stuff will be linked in the description of this video as well. So, without further ado, let's just get into this. In the year 3004, before the 4th Euromerican Games, it was decided that instead of pulling random associate countries out of a hat to choose them, the associate members of the EU would be cycled through in alphabetical order: Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway. So, this year, Iceland would compete again. Also, before the games this year, 8 new countries joined the American Union. These 8 countries being a combination of Central American countries and Caribbean countries: Belize, Cuba, Dominican Republic, El Salvador, Guatemala, Haiti, Honduras, and Nicaragua. This year also marked the beginning of negotiations with the outer South American countries to join the Union as well, so that the more inland countries could also join. This year's games would be hosted in Canada after Liam's victory. The 15 automatic qualified nations would be France, 23rd, Germany, 25th, Italy, 19th, Spain, 22nd, the United States of America, 24th, Canada, 1st, Sweden, 2nd, Costa Rica, 3rd, Netherlands, 4th, Finland, 5th, Luxembourg, 6th, Denmark, 7th, Belgium, 8th, Latvia, 9th, and Lithuania, 10th. This year, the games lasted for 2 days, the first Euro-American Games to last multiple days. This year's games were won by Katerina Bondarenko, age 16, from Ukraine. This year's games were ruled by controversy, as not only were most of the tributes at the younger side of the age range, but also 6 tributes had lied about their age. 5 11-year-olds had lied and said they were 12, including the tributes from Albania, Croatia, Dominican Republic, El Salvador, and Panama. Meanwhile, a 32-year-old tribute had lied and said she was 30. This tribute would be the tribute from Iceland. This would only work since the systems for blood draws and birth certificates were down, so the presidents of these nations had to rely on word of mouth. Immediately, the 8 new nations would cause problems. Not only were Valentina, 11, from the Dominican Republic, and Anna, 11, from El Salvador, were tributes since they lied about their age, but Carlos, 15, from Cuba, and Jose, 13, from Nicaragua, weren't present at their respective reapings. They could soon be found just feet away from the reaping stages in their respective countries. Meanwhile, another bit of controversy this year came from the reaping of Carmen, 25, from Spain, who was pregnant at the time, looking as if she could go into labor at any moment now. Meanwhile, Dren, 11, from Albania, Nika, 11, from Croatia, and Brita, 32, from Iceland, had also become tributes due to lying about their ages. Finally, Katerina was present for her reaping, and she wasn't very controversial. There wasn't anything overly terrible about her reaping. Ukraine had still not made it past the semifinals yet, making most citizens lose hope. Even some citizens from other countries in the EU and AU lost hope that Ukraine and/or Moldova would ever get a victory. When Katerina was reaped, this year was no different, with even Katerina not thinking she'd make it past the semifinals. When the tributes were reaped, 42 tributes were escorted into the waiting room. While in the waiting room, tributes were allowed to roam around and talk to each other, forming alliances for the semifinals. This year was the first year that the Estonian tribute and the Mexican tribute weren't automatically qualified. This worried Regina, 14, from Mexico, who didn't believe she'd make it past the semifinals. Meanwhile, Lena, 19, from Estonia, surprisingly wasn't all that scared. When Katerina saw Lena talking to Daria, 13, from Moldova, Katerina approached too. The 3 girls would get along well, considering they were all members of countries immediately threatened by Russia, as they had originally been members of the USSR. As Lena told Daria and Katerina that Amelia, 21, from Latvia, and Sofia, 17, from Lithuania, had been automatically qualified, this made Daria and Katerina want to get past the semis to at least meet Amelia and Sofia. Lena would then state that the trio would form an alliance for the semis, stating that they could invite Amelia and Sofia into their alliance once they get through the semis. This idea seemed like a great idea, as Ukraine and Moldova hadn't made it through the semis because of their lack of allies within the semis. After thinking for a second, like 10 seconds total, Katerina and Daria agreed to this alliance, causing Lena to smile as peacekeepers came into the room to collect the tributes and escort them into the semifinal arena. As tributes were escorted out of the waiting room, they had peacekeepers putting blindfolds on their tributes due to Ian from last year having cheated and snuck into the semifinals without his blindfold being worn properly. 2 very big and dangerous alliances arose in the semis this year. The Rus alliance, filled with the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, along with Ukraine and Moldova. The other big alliance was the Yugoslav alliance, composed of countries that were originally part of Yugoslavia: Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Kosovo, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Serbia, and Slovenia. This year, the Rus alliance would contain only girls, while the Yugoslav alliance contained only boys, with Nika being the only exception. As the tributes all made it to their podiums, the countdown began. As the countdown reached 0, the tributes were told they could take their blindfolds off and run to the weapons. Immediately, Lena, Daria, and Katerina ran at the weapon pile. Lena grabbed a spear and immediately threw it at Laia, 12, from Andorra. Meanwhile, Daria and Katerina both grabbed throwing knives, throwing them at Alia, 14, from the Bahamas, and Georgie, 15, from Bulgaria. Meanwhile, the Yugoslav alliance also got kills, as Nika slayed Anna, 13, from Armenia, and Kostas, 12, from Cyprus. Lazar, 14, from Montenegro, killed Joseph, 13, from Haiti, and Brita. And Stefan, 13, from Serbia, killed Emma, 15, from Slovakia, and Zeynep, 13, from Turkey. Other alliances also got kills before being completely killed off. Zeynep had killed Asha, 12, from Kurdistan, before being killed by Stefan, and Zoe, 13, from Greece, killed Akaki, 14, from Georgia, before being killed by Emma, who was killed by Stefan. After all was said and done, the last 10 countries standing in the semifinals were Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia, Kosovo, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Estonia, Moldova, and Ukraine. This meant that the 25 countries that would be in the grand final would be France, male; Germany, female; Italy, female; Spain, female; the United States of America, female; Canada, female; Sweden, female; Costa Rica, female; Netherlands, female; Finland, male; Luxembourg, male; Denmark, female; Belgium, male; Latvia, female; Lithuania, female; Slovenia, male; Croatia, female; Serbia, male; Kosovo, male; Montenegro, male; North Macedonia, male; Bosnia and Herzegovina, male; Estonia, female; Moldova, female; and Ukraine, female. As the finalists from the semifinals came back into the waiting room where the automatically qualified tributes were waiting, Olivia, 14, from Canada, and Luciana, 15, from Costa Rica, were sad that none of their other American countries had made it through the semis. But the European nations that made it past the semis wouldn't soon forget how the Canadian and Costa Rican tributes last year had taken in a European tribute. Meanwhile, Amelia and Sophia ran over to Lena and hugged her. Lena then stated that she wanted to invite Daria and Katerina into the alliance. Amelia and Sophia were reluctant at first, but soon accepted after Lena told the girls how much help Daria and Katerina were in the semifinals. Amelia and Sophia would then add that they felt bad for Olivia and Luciana, and wanted to invite them into their alliance, to which Lena, Daria, and Katerina would agree to this. As the Rus alliance approached the American girls, Gabriel, 14, from France, Lot, 24, from Germany, Julia, 13, from Italy, Carmen, and Harper, 16, from the USA, also approached Olivia and Luciana. As the two groups met, an intense stare-down occurred between the two alliances, with Olivia and Luciana in the middle of it all. As the stare-down occurred, Olivia and Luciana just slipped away from the two groups, not wanting to be in the middle of the two groups, just in case a fight started. Luckily for everyone, no fight started, but as soon as the peacekeepers came in to bring their tributes to the hotel, Gabriel, Lot, Julia, Carmen, and Harper glared at Lena, Amelia, Sophia, Daria, and Katerina, signaling to the Russ Alliance members that they would be the career's first target in the arena. At the hotel in Canada, most of the tributes were female, with 10 males and 15 females. Katarina was told to room with Frida, 15, from Denmark, while Harper was told to room with Nika. Harper and Nika's room assignment would result in confusing yet funny moments. This would include a moment during the first day in the hotel when Harper asked Nika how old she was, to which Nika said she was 12. This would cause Harper to say that if Nika was a day over 11, she'd eat her own shoe. This would cause Nika to laugh, even though she was very confused. Meanwhile, Katerina and Frida would get along surprisingly well. The girls would talk about Katerina's alliance within the arena, with Katerina admitting that she thought Sophia was gorgeous, which would put a smile on Frida's face. The girls would also chat about how both of their alliances felt bad for Olivia and Luciana. Katerina and Frida would then agree that one of their alliances should get both girls, and the two alliances would protect each other during the bloodbath in the arena. The next day, during training, Katerina went directly over to her allies, introducing the group to Frida. Frida would then tell the group about the plan that her and Katerina came up with the night before. Surprisingly, Lena, Sophia, Amelia, and Daria would agree to this plan right away, saying that they'd try again to invite Olivia and Luciana into their alliance. Frida would actually disagree with this plan, instead stating that the Nordic alliance should take in the American girls, stating that the American girls already had a bad impression on the Russ alliance. Katerina would nod in understanding at this and talk the other girls in her alliance into agreeing to this. Frida would then walk off to get her allies, while Lena, Amelia, Sophia, Daria, and Katerina would start training. As the Russ Alliance worked together in the spear throwing station, Frida came back with Juwani, 14, from Finland, and Astrid, 15, from Sweden. Immediately, Juwani and Astrid got along with Lena, Amelia, Sophia, Daria, and Katerina, agreeing with Frida and Katerina's plan to take in Olivia and Luciana, while the Russ Alliance protects the Nordic Alliance in the bloodbath, and vice versa. As Frida, Juwani, and Astrid walk over to Olivia and Luciana, the Russ Alliance watches from a distance. They see the Nordic tributes point towards them a few times, causing the American tributes to look at them for a moment before returning their attention to the conversation that the Nordic tributes were having with them. Eventually, Frida, Juwani, and Astrid returned to the Russ Alliance with Olivia and Luciana. The groups then discussed plans for the arena in hushed tones, stating that they should go for the Career Alliance and the Benelux Alliance first, as the Benelux countries always qualify. This idea does bring fear to Olivia, Amelia, and Sophia, as all of their countries have always been automatic qualifiers since the second Euromerican Games. But they all eventually ended up agreeing to this plan, hoping to get the Yugoslav Alliance in on it too. Later that night, the Nordic and Russ alliances got lucky, as the Yugoslav Alliance knocks on Frida and Katerina's door. As Frida answers the door, she's met with Amar, 13, from Bosnia and Herzegovina, Nika, Darden, 12, from Kosovo, Lazar, Marco, 12, from North Macedonia, Stefan, and Philippe, 13, from Slovenia. The Yugoslav the Yugoslav alliance claimed they heard about the Nordic and Rus plan through the grapevine, stating that they wanted in. Frida then looked back at Olivia, Luciana, Lena, Giovanni, Emilia, Sophia, Daria, Astrid, and Katerina, who all nod and allow Frida to let in the Yugoslavs. That night, the three alliances end up forming a truce between each other, saying they'd protect each other until all the careers and Benelux tributes were dead and dealt with. This plan actually gave every tribute in the room more hope that they could be the next victor of the games. The next night was the night of the interviews. This year, sponsors were finally introduced, finally giving a good reason for the tributes to make a good impression during their interviews. Backstage, all the tributes stood ready in dresses and suits. Some tributes had specially designed outfits, including a dress that didn't squash Carmen's pregnant belly and a smaller dress for Nika, seeing as she wore smaller sizes considering she had lied about being 12. As the interviews went on, there were a few notable ones. This would include Carmen's interview, where she admitted that she believed she might have done the wrong thing by volunteering for the games this year, seeing as she now thinks she might end up going into labor in the arena. Meanwhile, during Daria's interview, Daria stated that she hadn't been through her period yet, and was still scared about it. Meanwhile, Katerina's interview was nothing super interesting. She vaguely stated plans that didn't throw any of her allies under the bus, much like the interviews of her allies. She did state that she planned to kill the careers first, like the previous year. It was still not believed to be easy to kill the careers, even after last year, making some of the people watching the games laugh as Katerina brought up this plan. After the interviews, Katerina went back to her hotel room, shared with Frida, and hugged her allies, telling them that they all did well. The Rus Alliance, the Nordic Alliance, and the Yugoslav Alliance would be the biggest truce in the history of the games. The group would use their numbers to their advantage. The next day, peacekeepers took the tributes to a waiting room, telling them to wait there until the arena was fully prepared for the tributes. As they waited, Carmen and Daria started to experience pains in the waiting room. No one knew what Daria was experiencing, but everyone knew what Carmen was experiencing. As the peacekeepers came back into the waiting room and blindfolded the tributes, dragging the tributes into the arena, Carmen was groaning in pain the entire time. When the tributes finally got into the arena, Carmen fell to the ground, screaming in pain. As the tributes were instructed to take their blindfolds off, they all did, almost immediately looking over at Carmen. Meanwhile, Frida and Olivia got a good look at what the arena was. They were in an insane asylum that Olivia recognized as the Provincial Lunatic Asylum. As the countdown began, Lot and Harper immediately ran over to Carmen, while Gabriel and Julia ran towards the weapon pile. Meanwhile, Amar, Olivia, Luciana, Nika, Frida, Lena, Giovanni, Darden, Amelia, Sophia, Daria, Lazar, Marco, Stefan, Philip, Astrid, and Katerina ran into the weapon pile along with Lot, Harper, Noah, 12 from Belgium, Elias, 14 from Luxembourg, and Sem, 15 from the Netherlands. As soon as they reached the weapon pile, Amar, Lena, and Giovanni grabbed knives, Sem and Lot grabbed scythes, and Nika and Elias grabbed throwing knives. As fighting broke out between the groups, a whistle was blown and a pause ensued. Tributes looked around confused before seeing Carmen being medevaced out of the arena by peacekeepers due to the pregnancy. After Carmen was out and safe, the fighting was back on. As fighting raged between most of the tributes in the arena, Daria fell to the ground, crawling towards the weapon pile. As Katarina manages to kill Noah with her hands, she notices Daria crawling and runs over to her, protecting her as Daria got her bearings. Daria would then grab a dagger and join in the fight. As fighting continued, Daria managed to kill Sem before her legs clenched together and she fell to the ground again, screaming out in pain. It was then that the girls finally realized Daria was having her first period. Katarina would then pick up Daria and single-handedly carry her away to safety, staying with her until her allies started filtering into the room the two girls were in. After the bloodbath, the cannons of 9 tributes sounded. These cannons belonged to Noah from Belgium, Olivia from Canada, Luciana from Costa Rica, Gabriel from France, Lot from Germany, Julia from Italy, Sophia from Lithuania, Sem from the Netherlands, and Harper from the United States of America. With the Yugoslav alliance missing and only Elias remaining from their list of targets, the Rus and Nordic alliances decided to stick together until the very end in order to be able to kill Elias and have a fighting chance against the Yugoslavs. Just then, another cannon went off. This cannon was revealed to belong to Elias, as the Yugoslavs had found him, Nika being allowed to kill him off. The Rus and Nordic alliances would sigh in relief, realizing that it was one less competitor to worry about. Just then, Daria collapses again, starting to cry from the pain she was experiencing. She had no idea what was going on, but she knew she wouldn't be able to go on for much longer in the games like this. Many other citizens in the EU and AU noticed this too. All 3 victors and many presidents and high-ranking officials would meet up in Ottawa, Canada, in order to discuss what to do with Daria. It was officially decided by the big group of officials that Daria would also be medevaced out of the arena. It would also be decided that since both her and Carmen technically survived the games this year, that they would both also be seen as victors and mentors for future tributes, although they wouldn't have a victory tour like the official victor would. As peacekeepers came into the arena, yet another pause ensued as they went to grab Daria and take her out of the arena. As the girls said their goodbyes to Daria, they each said that Daria had put up a good fight, which made Daria smile before another intense pain flooded her system and she screamed on the way out of the arena. This would leave just 13 tributes in the arena, all of which were rare qualifiers, minus Amelia. Amar from Bosnia and Herzegovina, Nika from Croatia, Frida from Denmark, Lena from Estonia, Giovanni from Finland, Darden from Kosovo, Amelia from Latvia, Lazar from Montenegro, Marco from North Macedonia, Stefan from Serbia, Philippe from Slovenia, Astrid from Sweden, and Katarina from Ukraine. Most of these countries rarely qualify for the grand final. This was the first time qualifying for the grand final for many of the Yugoslav countries and Ukraine. Estonia had automatically qualified for the second and third Euromerican games, but only qualified through the semis this year, and the Nordic countries had only just started qualifying for the grand final last year. The only country that had been an automatic qualifier in the second, third, and fourth Euromerican games in the final 13 was Latvia. As Frida, Giovanni, and Astrid realized this, they gave Lena and Amelia predatory looks, before Katarina stood up and spoke up, saying correctly that with Daria gone, they can't make harsh moves like this, considering the fact that there was only 6 of their number now, meaning that if they kill Lena and Amelia, they'd be facing the massive Yugoslav alliance with only 4 members, making them an easy slaughter for the Yugoslavs. Frida, Giovanni, and Astrid didn't want to admit it, but Katerina was right. The group didn't want to face up against the Yugoslavs with only 4 members, especially considering the fact that the Yugoslav alliance still had 7 members. The group would then agree to sleep on the decision before the sun began to set. As the sun set, the alliances in the arena prepared for nightfall, talking about how night shift watches would work. It was decided that Katerina would take the first watch for the Ruski Nordic alliance, while Marco would keep watch for the Yugoslav alliance. As the night continued on, Marco explored away from the Yugoslav alliance, while Katerina stayed wide awake and alert on her watch for the Ruski Nordic alliance. As Marco explored, he spotted Katerina, thinking she'd be an easy kill. As Marco approached, Katerina immediately saw him, and she would grab Elias's throwing knives that Frida had collected. Katerina then threw one of the throwing knives directly into Marco's chest, sounding his cannon. Just then, Stefan and Philippe also ran into the Ruski Nordic Alliance camp. As Katerina prepared another throwing knife, Philippe and Stefan tackled her to the ground. Katerina tried to scream, but the boys covered her mouth. Katerina thought she was going to die at that moment until Lena stabbed Philippe, easing the pressure on Katerina and allowing her to get up. Lena and Katerina then smirked at Stefan. Stefan would beg for mercy, but none would be given to him as the girls ganged up on him, tackling him to the ground. What followed was so slow, torturous, and gory that some of the highest level EU and AU scholars don't even have access to it. But after Stefan's cannon sounded, his body was unrecognizable, only being able to be recognized by the teeth, as everything else was broken beyond recognition. Fubar, as some might say. The next day, as the Yugoslav alliance woke up, they realized that Marco, Stefan, and Philippe were missing. This would make the group realize that it was down to the top 10 tributes in the arena. The top 10 would include Amar from Bosnia and Herzegovina, Nika from Croatia, Frida from Denmark, Lena from Estonia, Giovanni from Finland, Darden from Kosovo, Amelia from Latvia, Lazar from Montenegro, Astrid from Sweden, and Katerina from Ukraine. As the Ruski Nordic Alliance realized that it was down to a 4v6, that's when Giovanni and Astrid snapped. Giovanni grabbed Lena and swiftly slit her throat with his knife, while Astrid picked up Lena's knife and grabbed Amelia, slitting her throat as well. This would cause Frida and Katerina to scream, although their mouths were swiftly covered by Giovanni and Astrid, whispering to the pair of girls to keep up before walking away from the camp, starting to look for the other Yugoslav Alliance members. Little did they know the Yugoslav Alliance was also looking for them. As the Yugoslav Alliance looked for the other group, Nika finally admitted that she had lied about her age, stating that she was only 11 before bursting into tears, stating that she didn't want to die. The other Yugoslav tributes felt bad for the girl, but soon her tracker would explode, causing her to explode. This would cause the other Yugoslavs to scream and gasp as they saw their young comrade explode. The President of Canada then came onto the intercoms and stated that cheating or lying of any kind will not be tolerated in the games. before announcing that Nika wasn't the only tribute who lied about her age. The other tributes' test results came back from the labs, stating things like their age at time of death. He'd then go on to state that Dren from Albania, Valentina from Dominican Republic, Anna from El Salvador, Brita from Iceland, and Leah from Panama had also lied about their ages. After this announcement, the arena fell deadly silent. All tributes stopped their movements. Eventually, though, more cannons would sound as the Yugoslav alliance slipped into the depths of insanity. First to get a kill was Amar, who killed Lazar, before being killed by Darden. This would leave the top 5. Frida from Denmark, Giovanni from Finland, Darden from Kosovo, Astrid from Sweden, and Katerina from Ukraine. As the tributes realized this, Frida and Katerina turned around when they heard a scream, only to see Giovanni and Astrid looking up towards the ceiling. Frida and Katerina would look up too, seeing Darden on the ceiling, looking down at them with intense, crazy eyes. Darden then let out an insane laugh before dropping down on Giovanni and Astrid, stabbing them both repeatedly in the head, neck, and chest until their cannon sounded. Darden then looked over at Frida and Katerina, whose eyes were widened in horror at the sight. This is when Frida and Katerina realized that the dim fluorescent lights and damp walls and floors had finally taken their toll on the poor boy. Frida and Katerina looked at each other before starting to approach the small boy. Darden would look a little scared as the girls approached. His last words were a desperate plea for mercy, to which the girls would oblige, making Darden's death quick, easy, and painless. As Darden's cannon sounded, this left just Frida and Katerina as the final 2 tributes this year. The pair would start to cry as they realized this, giving each other a tight hug. Katerina would then reluctantly pull away from the hug, putting one of the throwing knives against her throat, ready to slit her own throat. This would cause Frida to react quickly, kicking the knife out of Katerina's hands before using her own knife to slit her own throat, making Katerina the victor this year. As peacekeepers came in to extract Katerina from the arena, Katerina let out a blood-curdling scream as she fell to her knees, crying over the dead body of Frida until peacekeepers arrived at her position, carrying her out of the arena. As soon as Katerina arrived in the outside world, she fell to her knees and cried, not caring who caught it on camera. Eventually, Jordy himself would approach Katerina and help her to her feet, stating that he knew how it felt to see someone commit suicide right in front of you in order to let you win these messed up games. He then added that he was sure that Katerina's country was proud. He'd then finally state that both Carmen and Daria had survived their respective medevacs. A few weeks after Katerina's victory, she became good friends with Carmen and Daria. Although she was already good friends with Daria through their alliance, the pair became even closer after their victories, finally bringing pride to Ukraine and Moldova. Eventually, Katerina would get married to Daria after Daria's 19th birthday. When Daria was 20 and Katerina was 23, they adopted their first child together and moved away to Monaco in order to keep their children safe from the games. In Monaco, Katerina and Daria would adopt 5 more children, bringing their total number of children to 6, 3 boys and 3 girls. Katerina would come to be known as Katerina the Defender Bondarenko, after her very protective and defensive nature within the games and even after her victory. Meanwhile, Carmen reunites with her boyfriend, Pedro. Carmen and Pedro then decide together to name their baby son after Carmen's father, Jorge. Jorge Jesus Sanchez would end up being a tribute in a future Euromerican Games. In the year 3005, before the 5th Euromerican Games, a few things happened around the world outside of the Euromerican truce. The first event occurring in January. During January, Russia made another move, pushing northern India and southern China. China gladly gave Russia Tibet and the rest of Xinjiang. Meanwhile, India was very reluctant to give away their northern territories, having already lost Gujarat, Rajasthan, Haryana, Delhi, Punjab, Jammu and Kashmir, and Himachal Pradesh. As Russia pushed across northern India with the help of China and Vietnam, Russia did also take Nepal, Bhutan, and Bangladesh. Meanwhile, Vietnam was given Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, and Thailand. Finally, China took the Ryukyu Islands from Japan. This would scare Belarus and a bunch of Asian nations. Iran, Iraq, and Syria had applied to the EU but were declined at first, meaning they wouldn't have to send in tributes to the Euromerican Games. Belarus would also make an attempt to apply to the European Union, also getting declined. Finally, in Asia, Jordan, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Oman, and Yemen would unite and form one country. This country would come to be known as the United Arab Peninsula, taking on United Arab Emirates flags. In North America, Greenland gained independence from Denmark with hopes of joining the American Union. In South America, French Guiana also gained independence from France without hopes of joining the American Union. No countries would be added to the EU or the AU this year, meaning no more countries have to send in tributes this year. Although Greenland, Puerto Rico, Trinidad and Tobago, and the Virgin Islands have hopes of joining the American Union, they haven't yet submitted an application. This year's games would also become known as the shortest games in the history of the Euromerican Games, many kills being revenge kills or attempted revenge kills. This year's victor was Charlotte Dubois, age 17, from France. During the reapings this year, there weren't as many crazy interesting reapings as there were last year, but there were still some. Elizabeth, 24, from Croatia, and Anna, 23, from Slovenia, were actually girlfriends, dating long before the games even started. They met when Elizabeth went to college in Slovenia, becoming fast friends with Anna. During their reapings, they were both present in their respective reapings, but when they watched the other reapings with their respective country escorts, they both cried when they saw each other's reapings. Meanwhile, Charlotte, Elsa, 21, from Germany, Georgia, 19, from Italy, Sarah, 22, from Spain, and Annabelle, 20, from the United States of America, were all present at their respective reapings. This year, the career group was one of the strongest groups in the entire game. This year was known for a surprising lack of alliances, even in the semifinals, as all the automatic qualifiers noticed that the survivors of the semifinals were from all over instead of a bunch of tributes from one or two alliances. The automatic qualifiers this year were France, 17th, Germany, 16th, Italy, 15th, Spain, survivor, the United States of America, 18th, Ukraine, winner, Moldova, survivor, Denmark, 2nd, Kosovo, 3rd, Finland, 4th, Sweden, 5th, Bosnia and Herzegovina, 6th, Montenegro, 7th, Croatia, 8th, Latvia, 9th, and Estonia, 10th. As Charlotte, Elsa, Georgia, Sarah, and Annabelle waited in curiosity for the qualifiers from the semifinals, Altine, 16, from Kosovo, tried to talk to Elizabeth. Altine was trying to reform the Yugoslav alliance from the previous year. Elizabeth didn't want anything to do with this alliance, however, along with Ahmed, 20 from Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Yasmina, 14 from Montenegro, leaving Altine to go solo in the arena. After a couple hours, the qualifiers from the semifinals came into the room. The tributes who came into the waiting room were definitely a surprise, as the tributes from Andorra, Portugal, Cuba, El Salvador, Albania, Panama, Slovakia, Austria, Kurdistan, and Georgia came into the room. Annabelle found it surprising that the tributes from Cuba, El Salvador, and Panama had made it. Meanwhile, neither Mexico nor Canada had made it into the grand final. Meanwhile, Elizabeth also immediately burst into tears as she found out that Anna hadn't made it to the semifinals. She found herself glaring at Barim, 24, from Albania, who had been the one to kill Anna. Barim would catch this death stare, but wouldn't think much of it. In fact, he returned the death stare. With the 10 qualifiers from the semis, there would now be 26 qualifiers this year, as Moldova was also automatically qualified because Daria was seen as a victor. This would mean that the 26 qualifying countries would be France, female, Germany, female, Italy, female, Spain, female, the United States of America, female, Ukraine, male, Moldova, female, Denmark, male, Kosovo, male, Finland, male, Sweden, male, Bosnia and Herzegovina, male, Montenegro, female, Kosovo, female, Croatia, female, Latvia, male, Estonia, female, Andorra, male, Portugal, female, Cuba, male, El Salvador, male, Albania, male, Panama, female, Slovakia, male, Austria, female, Kurdistan, male, and Georgia, female. The only 3 alliances that would be seen this year were the Career Alliance, consisting of Charlotte, Elsa, Georgia, Sarah, and Annabelle, the Nordic Alliance, consisting of Peter, 27, from Denmark, Eero, 23, from Finland, and Sigfrid, 25, from Sweden, and the Caucasian Alliance, consisting of Zoran, 23, from Kurdistan, and Andrea, 26, from Georgia. When the tributes stood outside the hotel, Artem, 20, from Ukraine, immediately recognized the hotel as a hotel that his parents owned, Hilton Kiev. The hotel stood tall and proud over the city of Kiev, once a war zone in the early 2020s, now restored to the beautiful Ukrainian capital it once was. Charlotte was assigned to room with Sarah. Charlotte and Sarah, of course, got along well, seeing as not only were they both careers, but they were friends before the games, since their countries were right next to each other. Eventually, during the first night, Elsa, Georgia, and Annabelle came into Charlotte and Sarah's room to discuss plans for the arena. The group got along pretty well, especially Charlotte and Elsa, considering their countries were part of the Franco-German core of the negotiating European Federation, along with Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. It was thought that if the European Federation was radicalized, Germany, France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands would still send separate tributes into the arena, with Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands being inducted into the Career Alliance, now being automatically qualified, much like France and Germany. During training, Charlotte, Elsa, Georgia, Sarah, and Annabelle hung around each other. They'd go to pretty much all of the training stations, starting at the throwing knife station and going through the knife-related stations before moving to the survival-oriented stations. During their time in the throwing knife station, Mark, 24, from Andorra, and Lena, 22 from Austria were showing immense skill in the throwing knives. This would actually impress Charlotte, Elsa, Georgia, Sarah, and Annabelle, causing them to invite Mark and Lena into the career alliance. To the surprise of the careers, Mark and Lena actually accepted, joining the career alliance. After moving over to one of the electric stations, Abelardo, 21 from Cuba, and Lorena, 20 from Panama, showed immense skill and intelligence when it came to electronics. This would give Charlotte, Sarah, and Annabelle an idea for the arena. The trio would then invite Abelardo and Lorena into the career alliance, getting them into the alliance as well. Finally, when at the fishhook making station, they saw Elmer, 23 from El Salvador, making a fishhook out of wire, a fishbone, and a pearl. This would impress some members of the Career Alliance, Charlotte seeing this as a useful skill for trap making. The Career Alliance would approach Elmer and invite him into the alliance. Elmer would take a moment to think about this, unlike the others, before actually initially declining. As soon as the careers threatened to target him first, however, Elmer would then accept the alliance, the careers nodding, informing him that he made the right decision. Later that night, Charlotte, Elsa, Georgia, Sarah, and Annabelle went into Charlotte and Sarah's shared room along with Mark, Lena, Abelardo, Lorena, and Elmer. As the big group entered the room, Adriana, 22 from Portugal, notices Mark entering the room with the other careers. Adriana was the only person unaware of the Career Alliance's activities during training, so when she saw Mark with them, she was surprised. She approached the door of the room and knocked on the door. Charlotte would answer the door, see Adriana, and immediately slam the door in her face. Adriana would hear the other careers, including Mark, laughing at her failed attempt at getting into the Career Alliance, causing Adriana to run to her room, which she shared with Amelia, 25 from Moldova, hopping into her bed and crying herself to sleep. Later that night, when Amelia got back to her room from the cafeteria, she sees Adriana lying in her bed with fresh tears on her face. This made Amelia feel bad for Adriana, and she'd promised herself that she'd find out why Adriana had been crying and she'd try to fix it. The next night was interview night. Some interesting interviews were the interview of Olga, 20, from Estonia, who stated that she would not be allying with Spadris, 19, from Latvia, stating that she wanted to go it solo. Meanwhile, Spadris would state during his interview that he didn't like Olga anyways. After Spadris' interview, backstage, Olga and Spadris got into a fight, punching and kicking each other. Holek, 19, from Slovakia, had to stop their fight himself, stepping between the pair quickly. Meanwhile, Amelia and Adriana both state during their interviews that they would be allying with each other during the games. Amelia would add that she felt bad that Adriana had been crying the night before, and she had agreed to form an alliance with Adriana when she heard why Adriana was crying. This made viewers of the games this year feel bad for the pair of girls, especially after Adriana told the story of her encounter with the careers the night before. Finally, during Charlotte's interview, she was asked questions like what it was like living in France. Charlotte would state that she lived right by the Eiffel Tower in Paris, the biggest tourist center in France. This meant that Charlotte's life was full of noise, both literally and metaphorically. She'd also end up talking about how she had invited the tributes from Andorra, Austria, Cuba, El Salvador, and Panama into the alliance, after she was asked about her plans for the arena. She didn't elaborate on why those tributes were invited, just leaving it there. After the interviews, the big career group this year went to Georgia and Annabelle's shared room this time, hanging out for a while. Annabelle even brought a game known as Cards Against Humanity, which she taught to the members of the Alliance that didn't already know about it. Georgia and Annabelle even let a cameraman into their room in order to get their shenanigans recorded on camera to be broadcasted live to the EU and the AU. The group would play card games including Uno, Magic the Gathering, and Cards Against Humanity all night long, laughing and pretty much losing track of time. By the time they had realized how late it was already time to go to the arena, and peacekeepers had come into the room to collect them. As the peacekeepers put blindfolds on the tributes, some of the careers almost fell asleep as they were transported to the arena. Georgia even let out a yawn. This would lead the other tributes to believe that the careers wouldn't be much competition this year, much like previous years. Meanwhile, Charlotte and Sarah were the only careers that felt wide awake and alert, especially considering the pair went to their room early, letting the other careers continue to play their game. Other tributes didn't know about this, thinking Charlotte and Sarah would be as tired as the other careers. When the tributes got into the arena, they were instructed to take off their blindfolds. Once the tributes take off their blindfolds, Erdem immediately recognizes the place again, muttering Sviate Laino, roughly translating to holy shit, as Erdem recognized the St. Andrew's Church stood right in front of the tributes. Right before the countdown reached 0, Adriana snapped. She took a step off her podium, thinking she heard the countdown hit 0. As soon as her foot stepped off of her position, a mine exploded beneath her feet. The other tributes in the arena watched in horror as Adriana's body exploded, blood and limbs flying at the tributes positioned around her. This would cause Amelia to scream as the countdown finally reached 0. As the timer hit 0, no one moved. Even the careers were scared over what had just happened to Adriana. A few moments later, a gunshot rang out. Everyone looked over to see Peter fall to the ground, causing Eero and Siegfried to scream. A gunshot wound in the back of Peter's head. This would cause Mark, Lena, Abelardo, Elmer, Charlotte, Elsa, Georgia, Lorena, Sarah, and Annabelle to finally react. The careers all ran into the weapon pile, grabbing weapons. As the careers did this, Elizabeth tackled Bream to the ground, throwing punches directly to his face. This would eventually sound Bream's cannon. Meanwhile, Mark, Lena, Abelardo, Elmer, and Lorena grabbed different types of knives, teaming up and tackling Amelia to the ground, stabbing her multiple times until her cannon sounded. As for Charlotte and Sarah, they grab scythes and team up on Andrea. They'd show surprising skill with the scythes, killing Andrea relatively quickly. Finally, Elsa would grab a sword, Georgia would grab a spear, and Annabelle would grab a sickle. The trio then team up on Altine, tackling him to the ground and stabbing him with their weapons multiple times until his cannon sounded. Just then, the career group heard Lena's cannon sound, followed closely by another cannon. It was revealed that after Mark, Lena, Abelardo, Elmer, and Lorena had killed Amelia, Eero had found the group and killed off Lena before being killed himself by Mark. The last death of the bloodbath would be Holic. After seeing all the deaths dealt by the Career Alliance, Holic had no faith that he would ever be able to beat the Careers this year. So, Holic would sneak to the weapon pile while no one was looking, grab a trident, and stab himself in the gut with it. No one knew this occurred until Halleck's cannon sounded, marking the end of the bloodbath. After the bloodbath, 9 cannons sounded. These cannons belonged to Barim from Albania, Lena from Austria, Peter from Denmark, Eero from Finland, Andrea from Georgia, Altine from Kosovo, Amelia from Moldova, Adriana from Portugal, and Halleck from Slovakia. The Big Five from the Career Alliance, Charlotte, Elsa, Georgia, Sarah, and Annabelle, would decide to stay at the weapon pile to guard it while the other careers, Mark, Abelardo, Elmer, and Lorena, would go out and hunt for other tributes. Just as Mark, Abelardo, Elmer, and Lorena were about to leave, a throwing knife came from the bushes, hitting Lorena right in the heart. The other careers then looked to see Ahmed, Elizabeth, Olga, Spadris, Yasmina, and Artem rushing at the careers from the bushes. As the group of soloists ran at the careers, clearly not having a plan, Sarah thought they'd be easy kills, running at the group. As Sarah got closer, the other careers readied their weapons. Just then, Artem took out a miniature cross he had snagged from the altar inside the church and stabbed Sarah in the neck with it, sounding her cannon. As Artem looked at Sarah's body, a sharp pain shot through him as Charlotte had thrown her scythe at him, hitting him in the head. As soon as Artem's body hit the ground, the other soloists attempted to run away. The only other kills to occur during this battle was Ahmed throwing Charlotte's scythe back at the careers, hitting Annabelle in the heart. Meanwhile, Spadris threw another one of his makeshift throwing knives at Elsa, hitting her in the brain, sounding her cannon. Just then, a cannon sounded in the distance as Zoran had found and killed Siegfried with a miniature cross he had found on the altar of the church. This would leave just 11 tributes remaining in the arena before the first hour had even finished. These 11 tributes were Mark from Andorra, Ahmed from Bosnia and Herzegovina, Elizabeth from Croatia, Abelardo from Cuba, Elmer from El Salvador, Olga from Estonia, Charlotte from France, Georgia from Italy, Zoran from Kurdistan, Spadris from Latvia, and Yasmina from Montenegro. As soon as this was noticed by the tributes in the arena, all the tributes started to run back to the weapon pile, knowing that's where the careers would be. Meanwhile, the careers were collapsed. Mark, Abelardo, and Elmer decided to turn on Georgia and Charlotte. Mark was the first to take advantage, stabbing Georgia in the heart. As this occurred, 3 more cannons went off simultaneously. These cannons belonged to Olga, Yasmina, and Spadris. This trio were part of the truce between the soloists that were attacking the careers before. But as the soloists realized there could only be one winner, they turned on each other. Spadris had killed both Olga and Yasmina before he got killed by Ahmed and Elizabeth. Meanwhile, back at the weapon pile, the careers continued battling. Charlotte would skillfully kill Mark after Mark had killed Georgia. This would scare Abelardo and Elmer, causing them to pause for a moment in fear, giving Charlotte the perfect chance to kill off Abelardo. This would leave the top 5, still in the first hour of the games. The top 5 would consist of Ahmed from Bosnia and Herzegovina, Elizabeth from Croatia, Elmer from El Salvador, Charlotte from France, and Zoran from Kurdistan. As the 3 remaining soloists, Ahmed, Elizabeth, and Zoran, arrived in the weapon pile, Charlotte and Elmer would put aside their differences in order to take on the soloists. Charlotte would run at Ahmed, while Elmer ran at Elizabeth and Zoran. As Charlotte killed Ahmed, Elmer would get overpowered and killed by Elizabeth and Zoran. This would leave Elizabeth, Charlotte, and Zoran as the final three tributes in the 5th Euromerican Games, with all three of them already giving the EU and AU ideas for victor names. Elizabeth would be called the Vengeful Lover, Charlotte would be called the French Goddess, and Zoran would be called the Warlord. Immediately, Zoran would kill Elizabeth with his miniature cross from the altar of the church. Charlotte would smirk at this, feeling like she had a good chance at winning against Zoran. The pair would stare each other down, waiting for the other tribute to make the first move. Just then, Zoran ran at Charlotte, taking out a makeshift sword he had quickly carved from one of the bigger crosses in the church. He swung the sword at Charlotte, cutting open her arm even though she had ducked under the attack. Charlotte and Zoran then entered into a skillful battle after Charlotte had picked up Elsa's sword. The pair would battle with their swords for a few minutes before Charlotte ultimately gets the upper hand, stabbing Zoran in the heart before the hour mark in the games even hit. In fact, the 5th Euromerican Games only lasted 45 minutes. As Zoran's body hit the floor, Charlotte spat on his body before being escorted out of the arena by peacekeepers. As Charlotte was reunited with the outside world, Charlotte was crowded by many Ukrainian citizens, many of which hated her for killing Artem. Meanwhile, a select few Ukrainian citizens still loved Charlotte due to her looks. Speaking of Charlotte's looks, Charlotte would come to be known as Charlotte the French Goddess Dubois, in reference to her being one of the most gorgeous tributes to ever compete from France. Charlotte would also be the prettiest victor of the first 20 Euro-American Games and the prettiest fighter in the first Secret Victor Coalition during the first Great Euro-American War after the 20th Euro-American Games. A few months after the Games, Charlotte would return to Ukraine during her victory tour, being nervous about how the citizens would react, considering they had hated her when she first left the arena. At this stop during her victory tour, Charlotte would meet one of her 5 future romantic partners. Charlotte, being polyamorous, thought it'd be hard to find partners to love her, but it was relatively easy for her. Charlotte found Anastasia in Ukraine, Christina in Romania, Zana in Kosovo, Leonardo in Italy, and Andro in Georgia. Charlotte would end up having a huge family with all of her romantic partners. She'd adopt 5 children with Anastasia, 16 children with Christina, and 10 children with Zana. Meanwhile, she'd biologically have 3 children with Leonardo and 15 children with Andro, making 49 children in total, some of which would become victors in the future, including Buhargashi, one of 10 children Charlotte had adopted with Zana. In the year 3006, before the 6th Euro-American Games, the European Federation is finally radicalized. Originating with just the Franco-German core, it was decided by the European Federation that France, Belgium, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and Germany would still send in separate tributes for the Euro-American Games, but now Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands would be automatically qualified nations, now being part of the European Federation, which would be the largest financial contributor in the EU. Meanwhile, the UK collapses. After a surprising economic collapse, many countries part of the UK desired to split from the UK. First to go was Wales, seeking to possibly join the EU. Up next were the islands of Man and White. These 2 nations form more small microstates within the continent of Europe. Meanwhile, Northern Ireland breaks away from the UK, formally uniting with the rest of Ireland. Finally, England breaks apart into Northern England with hopes of reforming the UK, and Southern England with dreams of finally becoming an associate member state of the EU. Oh, and Cornwall also manages to break away from the UK, although they do not have any wishes to join the EU. Meanwhile, in North America, Greenland, Puerto Rico, Trinidad and Tobago, and the Virgin Islands officially apply for the American Union, meaning they now have to send in tributes for the Euromerican Games. It was also decided this year that 50 tributes would qualify for the grand final, including the automatically qualified nations Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, Luxembourg, Spain, the Netherlands, the United States of America, and the top 10 of the previous year. Although, this year, the automatically qualified tributes would be done a little differently, as all 26 countries who competed in the grand final last year were decided to be automatic qualifiers. So, 29 countries were already decided to qualify for the 6th Euromerican Games, meaning that the automatically qualified countries for the 6th Euromerican Games would be Albania, Andorra, Austria, Belgium, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Cuba, Denmark, El Salvador, Estonia, Finland, France, Georgia, Germany, Italy, Kosovo, Kyrgyzstan, Latvia, Luxembourg, Moldova, Montenegro, the Netherlands, Panama, Portugal, Slovakia, Spain, Sweden, Ukraine, and the United States of America. This year's victor would be Antoine Bourdieu, age 21, from the French European Federation. Antoine was actually born in Rome, Italy, to French parents, Antoinette and André. When Antoine was just 5, he and his parents would move to Paris, France. The reapings would start in France this year, as Charlotte, the victor of the previous games, was from here. Beneath the Eiffel Tower, youths all over France crowded around the reaping stage in order to see who would be reaped and who might volunteer in their place. Antoine had made a deal with his best friend Jade that if Jade was reaped, he wouldn't volunteer in her place, in order to allow Jade to bring pride to France. This would make Jade smile, feeling as though she had a better chance at winning than Andre did anyways. As Charlotte walked over to the reaping bowl and picked out a piece of paper, she'd read the name of 22-year-old Jade Garnier. As Jade smiled and began to walk out towards the stage, Antoine raised his hand, stating that he volunteered as tribute. Antoine's volunteering would make Charlotte smile and Jade scowl. As Antoine walked past Jade, he said, "Je suis désolé," to Jade, to which Jade just glared at Antoine as he continued to walk towards the stage. He smiled at Charlotte. Apparently, Charlotte and Antoine were exes. Still good friends, though. As Antoine got onto the reaping stage, he shook hands with Charlotte and stood at her side. Charlotte then lifted Antoine's hand into the air, announcing Antoine as this year's tribute from France, a proud smile on her face. Although things went surprisingly well in all the reapings this year, Ivana, 19, from Greenland, Sebastian, 23, from Puerto Rico, Aaliyah, 21, from Trinidad and Tobago, and Jasmine, 20, from the Virgin Islands, were some of the strongest tributes reaped this year, other than the tributes from the Career Alliance countries. Meanwhile, the most attractive tributes this year would be Antoine, Alexandra, 22, from Romania, and Cheyenne, 24, from the USA. This would cause Ivana, Sebastian, Aaliyah, Jasmine, Antoine, Alexandra, and Cheyenne to be this year's favorites for victory, or at least favorites for a good time and an interesting game. As the automatically qualified tributes this year waited for the other 21 tributes for the games this year, Antoine would stick around Victor, 18, from Belgium, Ludwig, 16, from Germany, Bianca, 20, from Italy. Jaden, 23, from Luxembourg. Mila, 21, from the Netherlands. Enrique, 18, from Spain. And Cheyenne, as they all waited to see which tributes made it through the semifinals. Before the semifinals were revealed, Alba, 19, from Andorra. Sofia, 20, from Austria. Camila, 15, from Cuba. Valentina, 24, from El Salvador. And Daniel, 22, from Panama, would approach the careers this year, stating that the careers were the first tributes on their kill list. This would cause the careers to laugh, Cheyenne even flipping off Daniel. Finally, after a few minutes of waiting, the semifinals were done, and the finalists started walking into the room in alphabetical order of their countries. First to walk into the waiting room was Narek, 14, from Armenia, who walked over to Ekaterine, 19, from Georgia, and Helen, 17, from Kurdistan. Narek, Ekaterina, and Helen would soon be joined by Tehran, 17, from Azerbaijan, completing the Caucasian alliance. The next tribute to come into the room was Jamari, 21, from the Bahamas. Jamari immediately walked over to Camila, Valentina, and Daniel. Alexander, 19, from Bulgaria, was the next tribute to come into the room after Jamari, walking to a secluded corner of the waiting room. Santiago, 23, from Costa Rica, would then come into the room, walking directly over to the American Alliance members. Christina, 14, from Cyprus, would then come into the waiting room, walking over to a secluded corner of the room in order to wait for the Greek and Turkish tributes. Emmanuel, 13, from the Dominican Republic, would be the next tribute to walk into the room, walking directly over to Jamari, Santiago, Camila, Valentina, and Daniel, Jamari dapping up Emmanuel when he arrived. Achilles, 20, from Greece, was the next to walk in, immediately walking over to Christina. Up next was Ivana, who walked over to Jamari, Santiago, Camila, Emmanuel, Valentina, and Daniel. Diego, 17, from Guatemala, and Joseph, 18, from Haiti, would be the next two tributes into the waiting room, walking directly over to the American Alliance. Up next was Liepa, 17, from Lithuania, who immediately walked over to Jean, 23, from Estonia, Gustavs, 20, from Latvia, Eva, 18, from Moldova, and Bodan, 17, from Ukraine, reuniting the Rus alliance. Luca, 19, from Malta, walked into the room next and stood in a secluded corner. Ximena, 22, from Mexico, was up next, walking over to the American Alliance, almost completing the American Alliance. Damjan, 20, from North Macedonia, who walked over to Azja. 14, from Bosnia and Herzegovina. Roko, 17, from Croatia. Leon, 18, from Kosovo. And Nikola, 15, from Montenegro, reforming the Yugoslav alliance. Jacob, 19, from Norway, was up next, walking directly over to Ida, 18, from Denmark, Linnea, 14, from Finland, and Alma, 16, from Sweden, finally allowing the Norwegian tribute to join the Nordic alliance. Susanna, 18, from Poland, was up next. She'd just walk over to a secluded corner of the room. Up next was Sebastian, who walked over to the American Alliance, being one of only 2 black tributes in the American Alliance this year. Alexandra followed, walking over to a secluded corner of the room, not having any allies. Up next was Aaliyah, the other black tribute from the American Alliance. She walks over to the American Alliance, immediately making friends with Sebastian and the other American Alliance members. Lastly was Ali, 22 from Turkey. As soon as he walked into the room, he went directly over to Christina and Achilles. As the careers saw the tributes settle in, they noticed Besnik, 25 from Albania, Sofia, and Emma, 13 from Slovakia, were the only automatically qualified tributes who were going it solo during the games. Meanwhile, they see Afonso, 19 from Portugal, went over to Alba, reforming the Iberian Alliance. The careers also noticed that the American Alliance was the biggest alliance in the arena this year, scaring a few of the alliance members. The tributes didn't go far from Paris in order to arrive at the hotel the tributes would be housed in, Saint-Gris-la-Paris. This hotel was actually right nearby to the Eiffel Tower, where the reapings in France had occurred. In this hotel, each room rented out for the games had a view of the Eiffel Tower. Antoine was told to bunk with Besnik. The pair of boys didn't speak to each other at all, Besnik having a major disdain for all the career tributes, while Antoine just hated Besnik's guts, especially after Besnik stated that he hated the Eiffel Tower and how much of a tourist trap it was. As the first night went on, Antoine would leave his room, going to Mila's room, where her roommate Liepa and the other careers are. As Antoine enters the room, Liepa was upstairs in the loft with Jan, Gustav's Eva, and Bodan, while Mila is downstairs in her part of the room with Victor, Ludwig, Bianca, Jaden, Enrique, and Cheyenne. As Antoine approached the other careers, Liepa and Eva would come downstairs to get snacks for the boys in their alliance. As Liepa and Eva see Antoine walking in, they make no effort to hide the fact that they were checking him out, Eva even biting her lip. The career boys would joke about this, lightly shoving Antoine's shoulder and claiming that Antoine had secret admirers. Antoine would laugh and joke that the girls were probably only 15, which did not offend Eva, but she still made no effort to hide the fact that she was still attracted to him. Meanwhile, Liepa just went back upstairs after grabbing snacks. As Eva stayed downstairs with Antoine and the careers, the other members of the Russ Alliance would think Eva was betraying them due to her attraction to Antoine. Meanwhile, downstairs, Antoine would motion for Eva to come closer, to which Eva would do without hesitation. Antoine would actually strike up a friendly conversation with Eva, talking with her about what her life is like in Moldova. Eva would mention how a F5 tornado had struck her hometown the previous year, having killed 18 people. Antoine, Ludwig, Bianca, and Cheyenne would then go on to tell stories about tornadoes that had struck their own countries, Ludwig and Cheyenne having also directly witnessed their tornadoes. Cheyenne having directly witnessed 15 total tornadoes, although most were weak F1s or F2s. In reality, Germany, France, Italy, Poland, Czechia, and the UK were the countries with the most reported tornadoes, along with the USA, claiming the most tornadoes in the American Union due to Tornado Alley in central USA and Dixie Alley in eastern USA. During the conversation, Antoine and Eva would unknowingly low-key flirt with each other. Eva would laugh at practically all of Antoine's jokes, even the not-so-funny ones, and Antoine would constantly comment positively on Eva's looks. Both Antoine and Eva would get very touchy with each other as well. The night would end with Antoine taking Eva back to his room, staying up all night with her. The next day was the day of training. As Eva and Antoine walked into the training center, everyone immediately noticed the pair's messy hair, although most just figured it was a messy bedhead, thinking the pair had gone back to their rooms after a while. Eva's roommate Alma and Antoine's roommate Besnik knew the truth, though. During training, Antoine and Eva couldn't stay away from each other, couldn't even keep their hands off each other. Flirtatious, borderline sexual contact, flirtatious comments, and even heated kisses shared when they were hidden from prying eyes were shared between the pair. Antoine and Eva would keep this relationship going throughout all 3 days of training until Antoine officially invited Eva into the Career Alliance, with the other members of the Russ Alliance present as well. Eva would ultimately accept this invite into the Career Alliance, notably flipping off Jan, Gustavs, Liepa, and Bodan, before kissing Antoine right in front of them and the other careers. The next night would be the night of the interviews. Backstage, Eva could be seen clinging tightly to Antoine, Antoine's suit not doing much to hide his muscular frame. When Antoine was called up onto the stage, he kissed Eva on the top of her head and walked out onto the stage. While on the stage, Antoine was quite the charmer. His looks almost immediately gained him many countries that notably wanted to sponsor him, including Moldova, where Eva was from. As he talked about his life before the games, the stories he would tell and his accent would only get him more countries willing to sponsor him, including Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, Cyprus, and Spain. His admission of him and Eva having a very intimate relationship would only gain him more sponsors. These countries would be Malta, Panama, Slovenia, Virgin Islands, and Serbia. This year was notably the first time a rule where countries couldn't sponsor their own tributes was implemented into the games. This would mean that France couldn't sponsor Antoine, Germany couldn't sponsor Ludwig, Moldova couldn't sponsor Eva, and so on. After the interviews, tributes could meet up with the leaders of the countries who were planning to possibly sponsor them. After the interviews, Victor was approached by the leaders of the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Andorra. Ludwig would be approached by the leaders of Austria, Bahamas, Belize, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. Bianca would be approached by the leaders of Greece, Greenland, Haiti, and Turkey. Jaden would be approached by the leaders of Kosovo, Kurdistan, and Lithuania. Eva would be approached by the leaders of France and Norway. Mila would be approached by the leaders of Albania, Belgium, Bulgaria, and Ukraine. Enrique would be approached by the leaders of Mexico, Montenegro, Nicaragua, and North Macedonia. Cheyenne would be approached by the leaders of Canada, Costa Rica, Croatia, Cuba, and Germany. Finally, Antoine would be the career tribute with the most sponsors, being approached by the leaders of Armenia, Azerbaijan, Cyprus, Georgia, Malta, Moldova, Panama, Serbia, Slovenia, Spain, and the Virgin Islands, meaning Antoine had 11 possible sponsor countries. Antoine would manage to keep all his sponsors entertained, along with the other career tributes. Eva even gaining a sponsor from Scotland after Besnik had lost the Scottish leader's interest. After all the tributes met with their sponsors, the careers all met up in Mila and Liepa's room. As the Russ Alliance saw Eva and Antoine enter the room, the group glared at the career group as they left the room. Eva would cling to Antoine out of slight fear of her old allies. The rest of the careers would promise to protect Eva in the arena, causing Eva to smile and feel safe with the career group, although she still clung to Antoine, feeling especially safe in his arms. Antoine would smile down at Eva, although later playbacks show a slight smirk on his face as well. The next morning, peacekeepers took the tributes back to the waiting room, telling the tributes to wait there. At this point, the tributes didn't know this, but the leaders found out that a tornado was possibly coming this year, so the leaders were discussing if they should postpone the games this year until the tornado passes. After a couple hours, peacekeepers came back in and put blindfolds onto the tributes. Although the tributes couldn't see where they were going, they could tell they were going up many flights of stairs. Once they reached the top of where they were going, peacekeepers instructed the tributes to take their blindfolds off. As soon as Antoine took his blindfold off, he realized they were at the top of the Eiffel Tower. Ever since the tributes arrived at the top of the tower, they had felt the wind blowing and whipping around them. As the gong sounded, the rain began. Instead of running to the weapon pile, many tributes ran to get shelter, as baseball-sized balls of ice fell from the sky. Many tributes got hit and killed by these pieces of hail. Luca, Christina, Linnea, Narek, and Sebastian were amongst the tributes killed by the hail. Meanwhile, Liepa, Jacob, and Sophia got majorly injured by the hail, along with Valentina and Jan would trip and fall to the floor, also getting majorly injured by the hail. Meanwhile, the rest of the tributes surprisingly made it out, hidden under roofs. As the hail continued, tributes stayed hidden inside. Eva stayed close to Antoine, clinging to him for warmth and comfort. Eva was feeling some sort of trauma from the storm, which was easily noticed by Antoine and the other careers. As the hail got worse, Antoine could feel Eva's heart pounding next to him. He placed his hand on Eva's shoulder, trying to comfort her through the storm. At this point, none of the tributes knew the extent of how bad the storm would get. Just then, the wind started to howl, whipping around the tributes. It was at this point that Antoine, Ludwig, Bianca, Eva, and Cheyenne knew what was happening. The 5 tributes would huddle together, Antoine showing fear he hadn't shown at all since its reaping. Finally, the funnel of an F5 tornado would touch down nearby. Immediately, tributes would rush for the stairwell, pushing enemies and even allies over in order to get to the stairs quickly. In the chaos, 5 tributes died due to being trampled by the others. These 5 were Valentina, Jacob, Mila, Camila, and Besnik. As tributes continued to run towards the stairs, the couriers grabbed their weapons and ran to the stairs as well, blocking the stairs off. The group would kill Ali, Sophia, Jan, Alexander, Aliyah, Alma, Zimea, Jamari, Leon, Diego, and Afonso during the rush for the stairs. Just then, the remaining non-career tributes teamed up and attacked the career group. Bianca would be the first to be killed, taken down by Nicola, Susanna, and Alba. Immediately after they had killed Bianca, Victor and Jaden worked together to take down Nicola. This would leave 26 tributes left in the games after the first hour of the games. As the storm raged on, Santiago, Susanna, Ekaterina, Damjan, Alba, Ivana, Gustavs, Bodan, and Turan all got picked up by the tornado and tossed off at the top of the tower. Meanwhile, rubble was picked up by the tornado, was also thrown at tributes that were still on top of the tower. The rubble would also kill a few tributes, including Victor, Jaden, Emma, Ida, Joseph, Asia, Alexandra, Enrique, and Emmanuel. This would leave just 8 tributes remaining when the tornado finally left the area. These 8 tributes left would be Daniel, 22 from Panama, Ludwig, 16 from Germany, Rocco, 17 from Croatia, Helen, 17 from Kurdistan, Achilles, 20 from Greece, Cheyenne, 24 from the USA, Eva, 18 from Moldova, and Antoine, 21 from France. As the remaining 8 tributes realized that they were the only ones left, Daniel, Rocco, Helen, and Achilles agreed to band together to fight against the remaining careers. Daniel would run at Ludwig, while the others dogpiled Cheyenne. To the surprise of the other outliers, Daniel was beaten by Ludwig, being killed relatively quickly, even though Ludwig was 6 years younger than Daniel. After killing Daniel, though, Ludwig would be tackled to the ground and stabbed in the heart by Achilles and Helen. This action by Achilles and Helen left Rocco unguarded and alone on top of Cheyenne. This would cause Cheyenne to easily be able to kill Rocco and stand back up, shooting an arrow into Helen's head as well. This would leave just Eva, 18 from Moldova, Achilles, 20 from Greece, Antoine, 21 from France, and Cheyenne, 24 from the USA. As the 4 remaining tributes realized they were the last tributes left, Eva hid behind Antoine as Achilles and Cheyenne glared daggers at each other. In a moment of lapsed judgment, Cheyenne ran at Achilles and tackled him off of the tower, falling off of the tower herself in the process. Eva would be the first of her and Antoine to realize that Achilles and Cheyenne had both died. This would cause her to let out a scared squeak, backing away from Antoine slowly. Antoine would look back at Eva with tears in his eyes. Antoine would then state that he didn't want to win, and that Eva should kill him. Antoine brought up that France had a victor last year, and that Moldova didn't have an official victor yet, so Eva should kill him in order to give Moldova an official victor. Eva would simply shake her head at this, stating that Antoine worked hard for this and that he deserved the victory. Eva would say this with tears in her eyes, preparing to take her own life to give Antoine the victory. As Antoine realized what Eva was doing, he ran at Eva to try and stop her, but it was too late. As Eva's knife slid across her throat, she fell into Antoine's arms. Eva then asked Antoine to sing for her as she died. Antoine would begin singing to Eva, a beautiful French lullaby his mother used to sing to him. As he continued singing, citizens across the European Union and the American Union would tear up as they watched the scene. Before Eva died, she'd muttered that she loved Antoine before the life drained from her eyes. As Antoine saw Eva died, he glared up at a nearby camera, his eyes fiery and angry. He'd stand up with Eva's knife in his hand. Before he could take his own life, however, peacekeepers stormed the arena, tackling Antoine to the ground and disarming him. Antoine thrashed around under the peacekeepers, but it was no use. As Antoine and the peacekeepers reached the bottom of the tower, Antoine fell to his knees, bursting into tears. As peacekeepers tried to help Antoine up, he swatted them away, stating that he just needed a minute. After a few hours, his victor's interview was cancelled due to mental health issues. Antoine was taken to his house, being put under house arrest, monitored very closely for suicidal intent. After a few months of close monitoring, Antoine was finally allowed to live a normal life. Antoine would end up adopting 3 cats and 2 dogs. Eventually, he would end up falling for someone new while on vacation in the Virgin Islands, Luna. Antoine would end up dating Luna for 3 years before finally proposing to her when they were both 27 and officially moved to the Virgin Islands. The pair would end up having 3 children together, all of which being girls: Lucy, Ellie, and Adelaide. Lucy would end up being the only one of the 3 girls to compete in a future games, and she'd win. So yeah, guys, that is the end of part 2 of the Euromerican games. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know the last game wasn't very descriptive, like the other ones were, like the other 5, but, most of the kills were sort of due to the arena event. Or it wasn't really an arena event, it was just uncontrollable weather that happened during the games at the arena. It wasn't really like an arena event like other Hunger Games stuff is. Like, it wasn't a planned event that was planned. It was unplanned, very unplanned for the games, but the games still went on, and people paid the price for it. But anyways, yeah, so that is the end of part 2 of the Euro-American Games. Hopefully, part 3 can come out soon. I've already started writing part 3. And just while I'm still going through writer's block with the other 2 series, I have this series to sort of fall back on, I guess. But yeah, I have a lot of new countries are joining in the next episode. Do I remember how many? No, I don't. But I do remember that there's going to be a 4th associate member state joining in the next episode. Towards the end of the series, there will be a total of 5 associate member states, but the 4th one is joining in the next episode. Now, what I thought would be really cool is letting y'all try to guess which countries might be added in the next episode. You've seen a lot of countries have, like, hopes and wishes to join the unions represented in the video. You've seen a lot of countries that have hopes of joining but haven't joined yet and haven't applied for it yet. You've seen a lot of that in this video, so what I want y'all to do is try to guess which of those countries you think might be introduced in the next video. And remember, this one, since there's going to be a 4th associate member state added, there's going to be 4 games represented in this episode. The 7th through the 10th. Those are the games that are going to be in the next episode. So the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th games. So a lot of countries could theoretically be represented in those games. Hold on. Let me check my laptop and give you an exact number of how many countries would be added in those games. Let me cut ahead into the video, get my laptop out, check it, and we'll come back. So, the 7th games adds 9 countries, although I will be honest, 4 of those countries have not been mentioned, like becoming independent or wanting anything to do with the European or American unions. But let me just tell you, the 4 countries that aren't mentioned, I'm just going to tell you what they are so that you don't have to go just randomly guessing countries. They're Crimea, who became independent from Ukraine. Actually, they became independent from Russia, wanted nothing to do with Ukraine, so they stayed independent, and now they're joining the European Union in the next episode, the 7th games. There's also Transnistria, who became independent from Moldova, originally joined Russia, saw the downturn of everything politically, left Russia, and now they're joining the European Union as well. And then there is the Democratic Republic of Alaska, which got independence from the United States of America because it's a territory that's far from the mainland of America, and America just didn't want to handle it, so they gave Alaska its independence. And same thing with Hawaii, now becoming the Republic of Hawaii. Both the Republic of Hawaii and the Democratic Republic of Alaska, they both decide they want to join the American Union, and therefore, they're still technically a part of America, just not a part of the United States of America. So yeah, there is that. So those are the four that you do not have to guess, but the other five were mentioned to become independent countries and were mentioned to have hopes and dreams of maybe joining the European Union or American Union in some way, shape, or form. So I'll have y'all guess that. As for the 8th games, I don't believe any new countries were added. I'm looking right now and I don't see any, but I mean, I haven't scrolled through all of them yet. Yeah, no, nothing new was added. If I go here, yeah, no, nothing new was added. If I scroll down to the bottom here on the 9th, nothing was added. And nothing was added during the 10th. So it's just the 9 countries that were added in the 7th Euromerican Games. But I already told you 4 of them: Crimea, Transnistria, Democratic Republic of Alaska, and Republic of Hawaii. Those are 4 of the 9 that are added in the next episode, but I want you to guess the other 5. Because those other 5 were mentioned to become independent and were mentioned to want to join the American Union at some point, or the European Union at some point. I'm not saying all of them are in the American Union. I'm not saying all of them are in the European Union. But there are 5 of them. So make some guesses. Make some guesses. But yeah, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed part 2. I hope you guys will stay tuned for part 3. It is in the process of being written. And I have some real good ideas for victors, in the next 4 games that will be in the next episode. So, thank you guys very much for watching this episode. If you liked it, then slap that like button. And, as always, stay awesome. Goodbye, guys.